Yo, what up? It's Russ, and I just got done playing Doom the Dark Ages. This is one that I've really been excited to get to because if you were to ask me what my favorite game is of all time, chances are I'll probably say the original Doom 2. Now that's mainly because it's the first quote-unquote real game that I've ever played. What's a 6-7-year-old kid doing playing Doom on a PC that still runs Microsoft DOS of all things?
Shut up!
We've had underage children playing Call of Duty for over a decade now, so to be honest, not much has really changed. When Doom 2016 brought the franchise back, I was so ecstatic for that game, and minus a few things in that game, I absolutely adored it. Now, admittedly, I did skip Doom Eternal, and that's mainly just because I simply wasn't a fan of all the changes they were bringing to the game, like the increased emphasis on platforming and the combat puzzles, as they like to call it.
We really wanted to make something that was like a combat puzzle. It's like a combat puzzle. Right. I'm like, I know, that's what we said.
It really just turned off my hype because I was really excited for that one too. But after the marketing push for it, I just kind of fell off and didn't end up picking it up. However, people do swear by that game, so I'll probably have to go back to it at some point in the future. But hearing that Doom the Dark Ages was going to take Doom back to a more grounded form of gameplay, that really got me excited to jump back in. And the fact that this game would be a prequel of all things was also piquing my interest a bit, since the lore they had built up around Doom Guy, the Doom Marine, Doom Slayer, whatever you want to call him. His backstory in this new set of games was actually really interesting. And so getting the chance to experience that instead of just reading it or viewing it through flashbacks, yeah, sign me up. I want to do that. So, with that being said, did Doom the Dark Ages live up to the standards of the games that came before it? Let's find out. So as I mentioned before, Doom the Dark Ages is a prequel in the storyline of this new trilogy of games, that being Doom 2016, Doom Eternal, and of course, the Dark Ages. The story takes place sometime between when the Slayer was sealed away, like the way we see him at the start of 2016, but after he made a name for himself terrorizing hell already and became the Slayer. If you know the lore, everything I just said makes sense. If you don't, well, that's kind of a gripe I have with the narrative of this game, but we'll get to that. The plot basically centers around this guy,
holy Jesus, what is that?
Wanting more power to have control over all the realms, I think. And the main obstacle standing in his way is our guy, the Doom Slayer. And that's it, I think. I mean, there's also the fact that Doom Guy, Doom Slayer, whatever the is basically enslaved, and that there's a hellish invasion that's happening of a planet that looks like Earth but is not Earth. You know, typical Doom stuff. Yeah. The premise of the game is kept pretty simple here, pretty sure intentionally, as to kind of keep in spirit with the rest of the games of the trilogy, or of the franchise as a whole, to be honest. And that in and of itself isn't a bad thing. But the story in this one, I'm not gonna say it sucks because I'm not a professional writer, so I don't know everything that goes into creating a narrative, a captivating narrative. However, I will say that the story did not manage to interest me in the slightest. I didn't care about anybody in the story for like 95% of it. None of the characters are memorable besides King Novik, Homegirl with the powers, and Demon King Deborah. And I can think of maybe one story beat that happened that was kind of cool, but they don't really even do anything with that and when it's over with. So, and probably the worst thing about this story is just how it just plops you right into it without an explanation of who, what, when, where, and how everything is being shown to you on screen. You get some flavor text at the start to help bring you up to speed, but aside from that, you don't get much help. Who are these humans? This person seems important, so does this one. Where exactly are we again? And how did things even get to this point? A lot of these things are just not clearly communicated, and terms and names are kind of just thrown at you like you're supposed to know, which again, if you know the lore, play the previous games, or just researched it, yeah, you get a sense of what's happening. But for a newcomer, they're completely lost. And I say that because even I was lost for a minute, and I'm one that's tried to keep up with the lore. And then the fact that this is a prequel makes the unapproachability of the story stick out just that much more, as everything is kind of just already established in it. Nothing is really introduced to you, and it just makes getting into it that much harder. And again, that's just looking at it from a newcomer's perspective. If you are well versed in the Doom universe, I still think the story presented here is pretty much full of nothing interesting. Coming into this trilogy, you were presented with such mystery and intrigue about the Slayer, and Eternal went further into that. So with the prequel, I personally, not saying this is the route they were gonna go, but I personally was expecting to be able to experience some of those important key moments in the Slayer's history that got him to where he was. Unfortunately, none of that really happens. To be honest, this story really ain't got shit to do with him. We've gone through the effort to essentially take you out of the suit, because that's what Doom Guy was in the beginning. He was the player, you embodying the character. So we've gone away from that to try and make Doom Guy an actual character that has actual thoughts and relationships with people that you can clearly see. Just for him to feel like he's just a pawn in this whole thing. Okay, maybe not a pawn. Maybe maybe more like a knight. All right, let's not disrespect him that bad. But despite him coming off that way, he is still the most interesting part of this whole entire story. Largely in part due to his don't give a f attitude.
If he ever gets control of it, that much power in Hell's hands, none of us would survive.
Just gonna walk off. Oh. No, we're still walking. Now, I do think we are kind of taking this silent protagonist a bit too far. Sure, he doesn't talk, mostly. Oh my fucking God, he actually said words. But you've gone so far as to give this man a face now that emotes. But you expect me to believe this man can go through some hardcore extreme agony and not make a peep whatsoever? Look at him. He's clearly going through it right now. I mean, even Link cries out in pain, goddamn. Hell, y'all gave the man grunts for taking damage in the gameplay. Y'all already halfway there. If there's one redeeming thing about this story though, is that it does provide more world building for the future titles if they do decide to continue this storyline. And it leaves it open for plenty of more adventures in Hell or Argent Denur. Whatever, wherever the hell else they decide to go. So there is still a large possibility of things to look forward to. All right, so let's talk about what Doom has always been about, first and foremost. The gameplay. But real quick, just to preface this, I played this on PC on what the game likes to call ultra nightmare graphic settings, because they just gotta be cool like that. And the game ran smooth for me. No frame rate hiccups, no crashes, a satisfying experience in terms of performance, which is pretty crucial in a game like this. But of course, that's gonna depend on your system. But if you've played Doom at all, then you should know what to expect to some degree. And if you played any of the previous games of this new modern trilogy, then you should feel right at home, more or less, because the fundamentals of the gameplay haven't changed. You're still a cracked out, die-hard believer of the US's Second Amendment, spilling demon bodily fluids everywhere you walk. Fan favorite weapons return like the shotgun, Zzz, plural, and the rocket launcher. However, they are accompanied by a slew of new tools of destruction as well, like the pulverizer that literally shoots bone shards over a wide radius, making it ideal for large swarms, or the cycler, which tears through enemy shields in a matter of seconds. However, with each God damn it. However, with each new game, with each new game, it seems like there has to be some kind of new gameplay gimmick, along with a tagline.
In 2016, we asked you to run and gun. In Doom Eternal, it was jump and shoot. In Doom: The Dark Ages, you're gonna stand and fight.
And what exactly does that mean? Well, it basically means you're Captain America. This time around, the Slayer is equipped with a shield, and this thing will become your biggest asset as it is the crux of the gameplay. And I mean like 90% of it. Of course, you can raise it to block incoming hits and projectiles, but you can also perform a physics-defying shield bash that homes in and has some pretty decent range to it.
Charging star! Charging star! Sniper! Charging star!
Kind of outrageous range to it if you're being real. The shield can also be thrown and retrieved like a boomerang.
Shield flash! Shield flash! Shield flash!
And these techniques are not only used for combat, but for platforming as well. But the big thing here is the ability to parry certain attacks. If an attack has any hint of green on it, prepare to time a block for that. Parrying is kind of important in this game, as your movement speed is quite a bit slower compared to the previous games, therefore making it harder to evade enemy attacks just outright. Of course, you can still block like I mentioned before, but you can't do that forever as your shield takes damage too. It's not made of vibranium. This thing does break. It even has its own health meter. Parrying is the only consistent way to nullify damage. It is also the key to opening up your enemies, as doing it enough times will force them to stagger, allowing you to get more damage in through, of course, shooting them to death, or by engaging in the revamped melee combat. I say revamped, but it fundamentally works the same as it always has, kinda. You have different melee weapons you can pick from this time. You can actually combo enemies, and melee attacks still have ammunition too. To be fair, with how much it feels like you're able to just bash enemies upside the head, and how overpowered it can get, I can kind of see the need to balance it out in that way. But then too, the melee meter sort of acts like a stamina bar, just with charges attached to it. So I kind of wonder if it would have just been a better idea to have a stamina bar instead. I don't know. There are also no more glory kills, at least not in the sense that we've become accustomed to. They're just more generic kill animations this time, although you can still trigger some special ones in different circumstances. To be honest, I didn't really mind their omission. I didn't feel as though I was really missing out on anything, as the game is still plenty brutal. Now, everything in your arsenal can be upgraded just like before. For this time, they're upgraded by finding gold just laying around, finding rubies, and these things called wraith stones. And with those, weapons can be equipped with additional side effect damage, augmented firing modes, and allow for combos with the shield, amongst a slew of other things. On top of that, each melee weapon has a tree with things such as additional pickups on hit. And then the shield itself has multiple trees pertaining to key abilities that you'll eventually gain access to and upgrade. Things like an earthquake attack, an auto turret, or f***ing lightning. All on a successful parry, by the way. The gunplay and firefights overall feel just as fun and intense as they ever have. Like every combat encounter, I could feel my hands getting more and more tense as I'm maneuvering through the battlefield. And then after the fact, I found myself physically coming down to a normal state of being, like my heart rate or my breathing, things that were elevated when I was in combat mode. You know, the things that you want when you're playing a Doom game, much less a high action FPS. You know, you kind of want to have a heart attack when you're playing. But if that's a bit too much for you, it has taken some real strides to make Doom accessible to anyone at any skill level, at least in the gameplay department. Because outside of the regular difficulty settings, you're able to fully customize your experience with the game. From the movement speed, to the parry window, to the damage, there are a lot of options that really don't give you an excuse not to find the right experience for you. And it's honestly just kind of amazing what you can go in and change. That being said, I did find this game to be a fair bit easier than Doom 2016. And from what people say, Doom Eternal was even harder than that. Like, I only recall dying once throughout the whole campaign here. And I don't really have a problem with that. Easy does not mean that a game is bad in any stretch of the imagination. So don't even listen to people who try to make you think that way. Now, the problem with this game is that for everything it does right and being fun, there seems to be something that tries to get in the way of that fun. And it can be the smallest thing, like looking at parrying. Yes, it feels nice to do. Yes, the slow-mo is cool. Yes, it's epic to string several of them together. The annoyance comes in with the melee-focused enemies that have attacks that send you flying 30 feet backward, whether you parry the shit or not. I can't tell you how many times I got knocked off the side of the map just from doing what you're supposed to do, parrying. Thankfully, there's no consequence to falling down the bottomless pit, but it can become incredibly frustrating nonetheless. Additionally, parrying is supposed to give you an edge in combat, especially with how much emphasis is put on the melee. But at the same time, you can't capitalize on that if you keep getting sent backwards. Again, the tagline is
Stand and fight.
how am I supposed to fight if I can't consistently stand on the f***ing ground?
Make it make sense.
While you do have a large assortment of weapons, I didn't find myself loving a large majority of them and ended up only using probably like half of them for two reasons. One, some weapons started to stand out and just prove more useful in given situations, which makes sense. But I just ended up sticking with those weapons in rotation, and it wasn't really for the fun or love of using them. It was just for the situational advantage. And then two, weapon switching kind of sucks. It feels very, very discouraged in this game as opposed to personally 16, and I'm assuming Eternal is kind of the same way. It feels so slow when you're in combat. And for some reason, you also drop the freaking shield whenever you switch a weapon, leaving you wide open to whatever's coming at you. So you really can't just switch like you did before. You gotta find an opening. That one felt weird because it was a key mechanic in the previous games that seems to have taken a few steps back, and now it actively works against you and standing your ground to some degree. But maybe that was a concession to, again, emphasize the melee combat in this game. Lastly, the pace of progression felt a little off to me as well. New weapons are consistently thrown at you at the early stages of the game, and then it just stops. And you know full well that you have a lot left to acquire, but you don't get anything for what feels like an awkwardly long period of time. And then you get a few more and a melee weapon, and then you don't even get anything for the shield till like maybe halfway through the game, even though the shield upgrade menu is staring at you in the face for the whole entire playthrough. It was just kind of weird to be bombarded and then go through a drought and then be bombarded again, instead of having like a satisfying drip to keep you interested and keep you going, like the rabbit chasing the carrot analogy thing, I think, yeah. Instead of what am I gonna get next, it was like, when am I gonna get something else? Holy shit. Now to get back to some more positive aspects of the game, the aesthetics. This game is very, very, very pretty. And to be honest, I expect nothing less from it themselves. High quality textures, effects, character models, everything in this thing animates very well. And the detail put into the dismemberment of all the demons is still very much there. just as gross. But I think the cool thing is the switch to a more medieval design language with all the castles and rusted gate metal structure, as opposed to the futuristic look that Doom has been known for since its inception. Honestly, it makes me feel like I'm walking through a modern day Heretic or Hexen level at some points. Shout out to those 5 of you that know what Heretic and Hexen are. But despite the change of scenery, it still manages to feel like Doom. Probably because it still manages to instill the futuristic imagery at every turn and balances it very well with the medieval stuff that has going on. I mean, hell, you're a dude in a highly advanced suit of armor, so it's literally in your face all the time. Like, they even reimagined the classic HUD. Now, it sucks, but they did it. Luckily, they let you choose a classic Doom guy mugshot. Favorite part of the game right here, hands down. So at no point did I question whether or not I was playing a Doom game. Okay, that's a bit of a stretch. I did question it, but it's because of the level design. There are 22 levels in this game, most of which you're running around on the ground as the Doomslayer. Quite loudly, might I add. A key point of this game is just how much bigger and open a number of the levels are this time around compared to the previous games, especially 16, where it was more vertical, whereas this one is more wide. Each one is littered with objectives, secrets, and treasures to find at your own pace, as well as several combat encounters that are all clearly marked on the map, so you can't miss them. And when you first come across one of these, it's genuinely an exciting and fun experience because of how fresh and different it feels to run around these kinds of environments in a Doom game with the Doom physics, if you want to call it that. There's always some sort of distraction, like, oh, there's a secret here. How do I get to it? I need a key to get to this. Okay, where do I find it? Which encounter do I want to tackle first? Or do I even want to get in a fight? Because I'm leaking kind of bad right now. The decisions that reveal themselves and the freedom to tackle them is fairly liberating the first time. Maybe even the second. The problem starts to arise when you realize that you're being told to repeat a similar process again and again and again. And it's usually a similar setup each time. There's a door or some point of interest, and then you have to go activate or destroy 2 or 3 things across the map to progress further. That gets old. And it made me want to quit playing at multiple points. Like, I don't know if this is a spoiler alert because honestly, nothing really happens, but I'm gonna say spoiler alert anyway. Even the last level of the game is like this. And that low-key pissed me off because it felt completely pointless. We've hit the climax of the story already. Why are we doing this? What are we dragging this out for? Like, gameplay-wise and narratively. It made no sense to me. And not to mention that these levels can last a really, really long time, especially if you're trying to 100% all of them. Some clocked in at north of an hour for me. And personally, that's way too long to be running around listening to this. Like, it got to a point where I just didn't want to spend the extra time searching for stuff. The rewards anyway aren't really worth it. You have the collectibles that have been in the past games. Cool. There's skins. Cool. I'm probably forgetting other stuff. Cool. But unless it's like an upgrade item, they were kind of useless trinkets. And 9 times out of 10, getting them was more a trial of, did you look around thorough enough? As opposed to, hey, solve this platforming puzzle or solve this whatever puzzle in a way. Yeah. Now, not all levels are like this. There are some linear levels thrown in the mix to shake things up a bit, and they are a nice and wanted reprieve. But it kind of becomes a pattern. You get some linear levels that mainly serve to get you to a boss or the next narrative location, and then you'll have a real big open level, and hell, you might even have another one after that. Rinse and repeat. It kind of becomes predictable when you finish a chapter what the next chapter is going to consist of. And I don't think going
2 cosmic relics detected nearby. Collect both to proceed.
when you start a new level is a good thing. They also switched things up a bit with the addition of a mouseable dragon and the operation of a giant megazord. But to be honest, I don't think they really add all that much to the game. The dragon specifically looks promising initially until you realize that they're making you do the same thing I just criticized. Big open level with the objective of destroy however many of a certain thing. The only difference is you're flying around instead of stomping everywhere. And even still, to actually clear the objectives, you have to get off the damn dragon and tackle them on foot most of the time anyway. So what was the point? What are we really doing different besides getting in a couple of dogfights? Dogfights? Dragon fights? Dragon fights. Whatever. Don't get me wrong, it's neat flying around and seeing these structures from like an aerial vantage point, and then to seamlessly land and get a whole new perspective from the inside of it is all really cool. But that can only carry you so far when you're ultimately doing the same thing that you were doing from the previous 6 hours. The mech does fare a little bit better in terms of diversifying itself from the rest of the game, although I'm pretty sure there was a level, if I'm remembering correctly, that had the same design of those open levels where you're going around at least clearing combat encounters over a large area. But the saving grace here is that they don't last that long and you just feel overpowered the entire time. But to be honest, there's not much about them to speak on. Like, you kind of just go around running the ones with people, dodging, and shooting motherfuckers when you get tired of that shit. It's not all that spectacular. It's just fine. It serves its purpose in breaking the gameplay, and I'm not upset with that. It's well documented at this point that Mick Gordon, the mastermind behind the first 2 Doom scores, mainly the first one, is not at the helm of this one due to his falling out with id over Doom Eternal's soundtrack. I'm not going to get into all the details of it. You can look it up if you really want to know. So for Doom the Dark Ages, it was outsourced to Finishing Move Inc., who have done music for a variety of different games, including Borderlands, Crackdown 3, Assassin's Creed 2, and Brotherhood. You know, the sacred ones. So some pretty high profile stuff here. And their work on this game? It feels like it fits well enough. Music properly ramps up during high-paced action. And then proceeds to settle down into a more atmospheric tone when you're just dicking around.
Demons are being routed.
But is any of it memorable? No, not really. It ultimately feels like a bunch of noise just to fill in the background of the action to me. I could honestly not tell you one single track from this game or where it was placed. Now, is that a bad thing? No. A lot of people would argue that a good soundtrack is one that you don't notice and just subtly adds to the scene or whatever medium it's being placed behind. I don't know if it goes that far, but by that point, it's really just up to preference. Personally, I prefer the days of level-specific themes that just played. I kind of would like that to come back. Granted here, considering how long the levels are, that might start to grade your nerves a little bit. But considering how they're trying to use the score to better enhance the atmosphere and the gameplay nowadays, I know that it's a low chance that we're ever going back to those days. But regardless, the music here, I feel, suffices for what it needs to do. So, should you spend money on Doom the Dark Ages? Well, if I spend money, you're talking about the money that you pay out for Xbox Game Pass every month? Then yeah, you should absolutely be checking this out. I think it's absolutely worth the look. It's buying the game outright everywhere else that kind of makes this hard to recommend because it really depends on your taste and what you value. My playthrough clocked in at about 19 hours, and that consists of me trying to find everything I could in each level, at least until I got tired of it. So the game could last a little longer than that, or a good amount shorter, depending on how thorough you are. The fast-paced action is a lot of fun to engage in with the new shield mechanics and the weaponry that's at your disposal. And there's plenty of it despite the repetitive design of the levels themselves. And there's also plenty of ways to customize the game with its modifiers to make it easier or really challenge yourself if that's your thing. So if all that sounds great to you, then by all means go get the game. But even as a self-proclaimed Doom fan, it's really hard for me to say go get this at full price because of the annoyances that kind of just built up over my playtime. The downtime in the game is not the most fun when it comes to just looking around for stuff. Even though the history of stories in Doom games suggests that the story shouldn't matter, the story here is lacking and just uninteresting. And well, they put it in the game and made effort to make one, so it's gonna be subject to criticism. And the level design, again, is repetitive, dragged out, and can become a tedious endeavor with this mission structure. Because of those things, I would totally understand waiting on this one and possibly catching it on a sale or something like that. But again, it's about what's important to you. Ultimately, I would say I had fun with the game, even through some of the glitches that did happen. Out of the trilogy, I would say this is definitely the weakest entry out of the three. But even with saying that, it's still a great game that deserves a look. If anything, it just speaks to how high the overall quality of this modern Doom trilogy is as a whole, and how much that 10 or 11 year wait has been worth it since the release of what, Doom 3? The Doom 3 DLC? That was a long wait. That was a long wait. So those are my thoughts on Doom the Dark Ages. Are you going to pick it up? Have you picked it up? If you have, what are your thoughts on the game? Did it live up to your personal expectations? And what do you hope to see from the franchise moving forward? Leave your thoughts in the comments down below. I'm always reading them. And as always, if you like this video and want to see more content like this, please feel free to subscribe, share, and like the video. And yeah, that's going to do it for me. I'm Russ, and I'll catch you in the next one. Later.